You think of Indonesia as the resorts of Bali, spices, and emerald rice terraces. Then imagine an ordinary-looking hill that conceals inside it a man-made pyramid 25,000 years old. And the scientists who managed to prove it unexpectedly lost their positions. Or two different biological species of humans that inhabited the same island simultaneously, and DNA that leads into an absolute dead end. And at the end, a volcanic eruption that nearly destroyed the human race as such. And one question that geologists prefer not to voice publicly. Today, 7 places and 8 facts from a country where official history is crumbling in plain sight, unable to close another folder of excavation data fast enough. It is customary to speak of Indonesia in the language of guidebooks. 17,000 islands, the 4th most populous country on the planet, tropics, wild monkeys, surfing. But look just a little deeper than this beautiful cover, literally beneath the ground, and one immediately discovers that not a single familiar version of human history works here. Creatures lived on these lands that never became the subject of proper study. Structures were erected here that could not have been created by those to whom they are conventionally attributed. Here sleeps the most destructive volcano that humanity has ever survived. And it has not gone out, it has simply gone quiet. Every site in this episode exists in reality. Each has an official interpretation, and every official interpretation has a line beyond which scientists prefer not to step, because there begin questions that have no answers. We will step across it. We begin with a deception that lasted for thousands of years. West Java, Cianjur Province. The hill of Gunung Padang rises above rice fields to a height of roughly 100 meters. On its summit, chaotically scattered stone slabs of basalt and andesite. Local residents have considered this place sacred for several centuries already. They come with offerings, pray, and leave the stones untouched. Dutch researchers in the early 20th century examined the hill and made a note. Megalithic sanctuary, age approximately 1,000 years. Nothing remarkable. They closed the folder. In 2011, geologist Danny Hillman Natawijaja brought ground-penetrating radar equipment to the hill. He was not expecting any sensation. He simply wanted to study the geological structure of the rock beneath the slabs. But the device showed something that should not have been there. Beneath the upper layer containing the known megaliths, a second layer was discovered. Beneath the second, a third. Beneath the third, a fourth. 4 independent construction horizons, going ever deeper into the body of the hill. Radiocarbon analysis of organic samples taken from each horizon produced dates that took the breath away from the scientific community. The lowest layer, from 20 to 25,000 years ago. This is not a medieval place of worship. This is a man-made structure erected in an era when, according to all established chronology, humans worldwide led a hunter-gatherer existence and built nothing monumental anywhere on Earth. Nowhere at all. In 2023, Natawijaja and co-authors published a study in the peer-reviewed journal Archaeological Prospection. The article passed all expert reviews and was published. But within a few weeks, a group of geologists sent the editorial board an open letter demanding the publication be retracted. The journal launched a review procedure. To this day, the article has not been officially retracted, but has not been definitively confirmed either. It has been suspended in this intermediate state for more than 2 years. Note the mechanics of what is happening. Not a refutation through new field data. Not an independent expedition producing different results. Pressure on the editorial board demanding the removal of published findings. In science, this is not how one acts when seeking the truth. This is how one acts when one wants to block it. What exactly is concealed inside this hill at depths of 3 to 30 meters has not been officially established to this day. Excavations proceed slowly and with interruptions. Funding appears and then freezes. Local authorities in different years have taken diametrically opposed positions, first supporting the research, then restricting access. Officials in the Indonesian Ministry of Education have changed several times along with their position on this site. If the dating of the lower layer is correct, Gunung Padang is approximately 6 times older than the earliest Egyptian pyramids. roughly twice as old as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is currently considered the oldest monumental structure on the planet. This is not a revision of a single date. This is a revision of the entire chronology of human civilization as a whole. The hill stands. Local residents continue to bring offerings. Researchers continue to dispute. And what rests 30 meters below the basalt slabs continues to wait. But Gunung Padang is a mystery that at least has a name. The next place is a mystery that has no name, no explanation, and not even an understanding of what exactly we found there. Flores Island, Indonesia, 2003. An international group of paleoanthropologists conducts excavations in Liang Bua Cave in search of remains of anatomically modern humans and discovers something fundamentally different. A skeleton. An adult individual. Height, approximately 1 meter. Brain volume, just over 400 cubic centimeters. For comparison, the brain volume of a modern adult human is around 1,400 cubic centimeters. This is less than a chimpanzee's. And yet beside the bones, stone tools with clear signs of complex, careful workmanship. Traces of fire. Traces of hunting large animals. Science gave this species the name Homo floresiensis. Journalists instantly dubbed them Hobbits. The team published the find in the journal Nature in 2004, and it became one of the most resonant paleoanthropological discoveries of the entire decade. Then the arguments began and have not quieted since. The first question: where did they come from? One hypothesis: an isolated branch of Homo erectus that was trapped on the island after its separation from the mainland, and gradually shrank through insular dwarfism. This phenomenon is well known. On isolated islands, large animals frequently become smaller due to a limited food supply. The Flores dwarf elephants that inhabited the island in the same era were also considerably more compact than their mainland relatives. A different version emerged in 2017 following new excavations on Flores. On the same island were found teeth and bones of another creature dated to 700,000 years ago. And to judge by the proportions, it was the ancestor of the Hobbits. Which means the island isolation lasted not tens of thousands but hundreds of thousands of years. But the most inconvenient fact is not about origin. The most inconvenient fact is coexistence. According to the latest data, Homo floresiensis inhabited Flores until approximately 50,000 years ago. Homo sapiens arrived at the islands of the Indonesian archipelago at approximately the same time, or slightly earlier. This means two different species of humans were on the same island simultaneously, or with a minimal time gap. What happened between them is unknown. No traces of direct contact have been found. No traces of conflict either. The hobbits simply disappeared, quietly, without apparent cause. Geneticists have tried several times to extract DNA from the bones of Homo floresiensis. In tropical climate conditions, organic molecules break down rapidly, and all attempts have so far produced no result. This means we have no genetic profile of this species. We do not know whether interbreeding occurred. We do not know whether they left a trace in the genome of the modern inhabitants of Flores or other Indonesian islands. Local residents of the island pass down from generation to generation legends about small creatures called Ibu Gogo, shaggy, speaking in an incomprehensible language, living somewhere in the mountains. In some versions, cannibals. In others, simply neighbors who one day stopped being encountered. This is oral tradition, and drawing a direct conclusion from it about hobbits would be an excessively bold step. But when legends describe small beings who lived alongside humans until relatively recently, and science finds the bones of precisely such beings in a cave on the same island, the space between myth and fossil suddenly begins to shrink. 50,000 years ago on Flores lay stone tools bearing the traces of other hands. Whose hands they were, we know. Where those hands disappeared to, we do not. And now, to where the mystery is not who built, but what exactly made them abandon everything. Central Java, the Kedu Plain, 826 CE. According to one version, by order of King Samarawijaya. According to another, by the collective decision of the Buddhist community. According to a third, out of necessity. It does not matter whose initiative it was. What matters is what happened next. The largest Buddhist monumental complex on the planet was deliberately buried under earth. Borobudur, 9 tiered levels, more than 100 stupas, and 4,500 square meters of relief carving, was covered with a layer of volcanic ash and soil. Not destroyed, not burned, not looted. Hidden. Precisely when and why, no one knows with certainty. The burial took place sometime in the 9th or 10th century. The first written mention of Borobudur's existence appears only in the 14th century, as a vague reference to an unnamed structure somewhere in the jungle. In 1814, the colonial administrator Thomas Stamford Raffles received reports from locals about a large stone monument hidden in the undergrowth and sent a team of workers to clear the vegetation. They uncovered the first tiers. Raffles described what he saw as extraordinary. He was not wrong. Borobudur was built from approximately 2 million blocks of local volcanic stone without binding mortar, each held in place only by its own weight and the weight of the stone above it. This is not the simplest engineering solution. On the contrary, it requires extremely precise calculation of load distribution. Even today, engineers studying the structure's stability find that the mass of each block is calibrated to within a few % of the optimum. The outer walls bear carvings in relief, 2,732 panels. Each depicts a scene from the life of the Buddha, the Jataka tales, or cosmological narratives. Taken together, they form the longest continuous narrative frieze in the world. If laid end to end, the panels would stretch for 6 kilometers. But here begins the detail that the official guidebooks tend to keep for the last page or skip entirely. Before the construction of Borobudur was completed, its builders deliberately buried the lowest level of the structure. The so-called hidden foot was covered with stone and rendered invisible. On it, 516 panels of relief carving that no one was ever meant to see. In the 1980s, during restoration work, researchers managed to carefully shift a section of the covering stones and examine the hidden panels. What they depicted: scenes of action and consequence, a visual code of cause and effect, illustrating the law of karma at a level of detail that goes far beyond the decorative program of the visible galleries. The conclusion some researchers have drawn: this is not decoration. This is a foundation. A layer that was not supposed to be seen, but whose presence changes the meaning of everything above it. Why was it hidden? Theories exist. The most common: it was buried to prevent slippage of the base, and the carvings were simply a casualty of structural necessity. An alternative version: the builders considered certain images too powerful to be accessible to ordinary visitors, and deliberately concealed them at the very foundation. Neither version has been proven. Neither has been refuted. The hidden foot of Borobudur simply exists, and no one has yet managed to explain why it was built and then immediately hidden. From the 9th century forward into the distant past and then back to the surface and to the walls. On the island of Sulawesi, in the district of Maros Pangkep, there are limestone caves. Inside them, paintings, animals, human silhouettes, geometric symbols. The first researchers to examine them in the 1950s dated them by visual style as approximately 10,000 years old. In 2014, Australian scientists applied uranium-thorium dating directly to the calcite crust that had formed over the paint layer. The result changed the picture completely. The oldest image, the outline of a human hand, surrounded by blown red pigment, is at least 45,500 years old. This is not simply old rock art. This is the oldest figurative cave painting on Earth. Until this discovery, the Lascaux Cave in France and the Altamira Cave in Spain held this status, with ages of approximately 35 and 40,000 years respectively. The discovery on Sulawesi pushed the boundary of known human art back by almost 10,000 years. And it was not in Europe, it was in Southeast Asia. In 2019, in the same cave system, researchers found something even more striking. A painting depicting a hunting scene. Small human-like figures with animal features, tails, snouts, pursuing wild boar and dwarf buffalo. The age of this composition is at least 44,000 years, and it is the oldest narrative painting in history. Not just a handprint or a silhouette, a scene with plot, characters, and action. The beings depicted in the hunting scene are not human and not animal. The researchers cautiously describe them as therianthropes, hybrid creatures combining human and animal features. In shamanic traditions, this is a figure of a person in a state of transformation, entering the animal world, acquiring its qualities. But the shamanic interpretation is a hypothesis, not a fact. What the artists themselves meant by these images, no one knows. Furthermore, the genetic origin of the people who lived on Sulawesi 45,000 years ago remains the subject of debate. Archaeological studies show that the islands of Indonesia were inhabited by different population waves that mixed with each other in poorly understood ways. The people who made these paintings may belong to a genetic lineage that subsequently disappeared almost entirely from the region, or merged with another, leaving only a trace. We know that they were here. We know they could paint. We know they had a concept of narrative, of myth, of transformation. Everything else, the language, the religion, the name they called themselves, is gone without a trace. In the center of Sulawesi Island, in the Bada Valley, there stand stone statues. Approximately 230 objects, carved from natural boulders of local rock. Height from 0.5 meter to 4.5. The largest, called Palindo, the Entertainer, stands more than 4 meters tall. Age estimates range from roughly 1,000 to 4,000 years. Each figure has the same features: large eyes, prominent nose, a mouth, hands resting on the belly. Some have sex characteristics explicitly rendered. All have been found already in place, with no evidence of being moved after installation. At the feet of the statues, small stone vessels. Some contain remnants of offerings that continue to appear to this day. No one knows who made them. The people who live in the Bada Valley today have no tradition connected to the statues. They did not carve them. They do not know who did. They simply live alongside them and sometimes leave offerings at their feet without being able to say why they do so. It is a reflex inherited from ancestors who have long since forgotten the meaning of the ritual. The closest parallels in form, elongated figures with hands on belly, similar facial features, are found in the Easter Island statues, on Nias Island in the same Indonesian archipelago, and in several sites in Polynesia. Researchers note this resemblance but have not proposed a satisfying explanation for it. The cultures were separated by thousands of kilometers and apparently by thousands of years. To be continued in Prambanan. But first, the scales. The Prambanan temple complex stands in central Java, 4 kilometers from the city of Yogyakarta. It was built in the 9th century CE, approximately simultaneously with Borobudur, which lies 40 kilometers away. 2 monumental complexes in the same cultural era, in the same geographical region, one Buddhist, the other Hindu, both with dimensions that should have been impossible for their time. Prambanan consists of 240 temples of varying sizes. The central towers, dedicated to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, reach heights of 47 to 54 meters. They are built from andesite, a volcanic rock considerably harder than sandstone. The outer walls of each temple are covered in relief friezes depicting scenes from the Ramayana epic. And here is where the technical question arises that no tour guide ever discusses. These friezes are carved in andesite. The degree of fineness of the carving, line width, detail of faces, decorative elements, corresponds to what modern craftsmen achieve using high-speed mechanical tools with carbide tips and continuous water cooling. The instrument set that the Mataram kingdom in the 9th century demonstrably had access to consisted of bronze chisels, stone abrasives, and manual force. Modern experiments with exact replicas of such tools on andesite samples show. Achieving carving of comparable quality requires either a quality of bronze unknown in that region for that period, or a technique that leaves no traces in the archaeological record. This is not proof of the impossible. This is a gap in the explanation. Something was used that we have not identified. The friezes exist. The tools that logically should have been used are insufficient. The explanation that bridges these two facts does not exist. In 2022, the Indonesian Geological Service conducted ground-penetrating radar scanning of the territory of the central part of the Prambanan complex and recorded underground anomalies. This is not speculation. This is the wording from the official press release. No description of the forms, sizes, or nature of the anomalies is available in the public domain. The further study that was announced has not resulted in a single subsequent publication. What exactly is concealed beneath the central towers? An open question with recorded anomalies and no answer. And now, to what is concealed by no official version whatsoever. To what lies on the surface. Literally, in stone. Literally, in plain sight. And which no one can explain in a way that does not crumble under the slightest pressure. Sumatra Island, 75,000 years ago. Lake Toba today is quiet, deep, its water a saturated blue. Tourists rent boats, fishermen go out on the water, villages stand along the shores. Nothing in this landscape indicates that this is where the history of humanity nearly came to an end. 74,000 years ago, the Toba volcano, not the small cone visible today, but the entire mountain massif beneath the present-day lake, experienced an eruption of such power that geologists assigned it a special category: supervolcanic eruption. This was not an ordinary volcano that spilled lava over neighboring slopes. This was an explosion that hurled between 2,500 and 3,000 cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere. For comparison, the largest eruption in documented history, Tambora in 1815, also in Indonesia, produced around 160 cubic kilometers. Toba ejected 20 times more. A layer of ash blanketed territories from India to South Africa. Particles of volcanic glass were found in ice cores from both poles. The average temperature of the planet, according to calculated data, fell by approximately 3 to 5 degrees over several years. In high latitudes, considerably more. Volcanic winter. Sunlight blocked by ash particles in the stratosphere. Photosynthesis suppressed. Food chains collapsing from the bottom up. Geneticists studying the diversity of mitochondrial DNA in modern humans have long noted one anomaly. All of humanity is genetically considerably more uniform than one would expect from a species that has existed for around 300,000 years. This is called a genetic bottleneck, a moment when a population shrinks sharply and all subsequent diversity originates from a small group of survivors. The Toba hypothesis, first formulated by geneticist Stanley Ambrose in 1998, proposes that this supervolcanic eruption reduced the number of Homo sapiens to a few thousand individuals, and possibly a few hundred. A few thousand people, the entire species. Several scattered groups dispersed across Africa and nearby regions of Asia. All of humanity today is descended from precisely these people who survived the volcanic winter. The hypothesis remains disputed. Some geneticists accept it, some contest it. African excavations provide evidence of human activity in the period immediately after the eruption, which contradicts the version of near-total extinction. The question is not closed. But what is completely closed is the conversation about Toba's future, because beneath the lake the same magmatic chamber still lies. It has not emptied, it has not cooled. Geologists regularly record seismic activity in this area. The most recent large earthquake directly in the Toba caldera zone occurred in 2022. This is not a warning. It is simply a fact about rock that continues to move. Supervolcanic eruptions cannot be precisely predicted. No early warning systems for them exist. No one knows when or whether the next one will occur. The average statistical interval between supervolcanic eruptions in Earth's history is tens of thousands of years. The last one was 74,000 years ago. Tourists on the shores of Toba rent boats. The water is blue. The air is quiet. The volcano waits. Pause for a moment. 7 places, 7 stories. Look at what we have seen. Gunung Padang, a hill with man-made layers 25,000 years old. An article that was nearly retracted on the demand of colleagues, without a single piece of counter-evidence. The Flores Hobbit, a separate species of human with a brain the size of a grapefruit, who left sophisticated tools and dissolved at precisely the moment we arrived on the island. Borobudur, the largest Buddhist monument in the world, deliberately buried by its own creators, with a hidden gallery walled up during construction itself. The Sulawesi caves, the oldest narrative art on the planet, with hybrid images and genetics without an address. The Bada Valley Megaliths, stone figures without an author, receiving offerings without an offerer. Prambanan, andesite friezes that cannot be carved with the tools documented for this era, and underground anomalies that were announced, and then silence. Toba, a lake above a magmatic chamber that already once nearly erased our species from the face of the earth. What connects these 7 places? Not mysticism, not conspiracy. They are connected by something else. Each is a zone where the official answer is either absent or stops exactly where the uncomfortable begins. Stones with dates that break the chronology, and an article under pressure. DNA without a source and the silence of laboratories. Underground anomalies and a press release of 2 lines. This is not a conspiracy. This is how the system works when facts go too far beyond the bounds of convenient explanations. Careful silence is the most common way of not answering an inconvenient question. Indonesia is inconvenient as a subject of historical research precisely because it is too large, too fragmented, and catastrophically understudied. 17,000 islands, most without systematic excavations. Hundreds of cave systems into which no researcher's foot has stepped. Several hundred languages, and in each, its own traditions about what was here before us. The next time you see a photograph of Bali with its sunset and rice terraces, remember, several hundred kilometers from there stands a hill that was considered an ordinary hill for 1,000 years, and that something inside this hill is waiting, 30 meters down, in a layer 25,000 years old. Write in the comments which of the 7 sites caught your attention most and why. If this episode was interesting, support it with a like and subscribe to the channel. In the next episode, we will travel to a country where in 2025 an underground complex was discovered about which the government did not give a single official comment for 8 months.